Is it focusing? Right here. Come on. Ooh. Hello everyone. This is not going to be a video for everyone. If you're here for funny content, yeah, might not be for you. Click away. If I get a single like on this video, I'll do it again. So if you're here for this, let me know. It is currently 1 a.m. and as you may have gotten from the title, I am going to be talking a bit about books in an attempt to be a better person in life. I have been reading books. Crazy concept. Yeah, so recently, as in since the beginning of the school year, with the little time I had, I've managed to read 3 books, which is a lot. And well, especially when you see the size of them. One of them, very big. So I'm just gonna talk about the books, sort of review them, talk about what I liked, didn't like. I thought maybe if you guys had read the books, you could tell me if you agreed with my things, or maybe I might, it might be a good book for you to read if I like it. Okay, I think that's it. Let's just jump in. The first book I read, which I started reading in September and basically took me like a month and a half to finish, was this guy. This is this book about Steve Jobs. It's a cool copy because it was signed by the author. Well, I guess I'm not reading it for the author, but yeah. And this is like the original version apparently. Like the new ones have like the more common photo of Steve Jobs. I'd been wanting to read this book, and it was honestly like a really good book. He's a good writer. I had seen the 2 movies that they made based off of this book and based off of Steve Jobs' general life. Yeah, it's a cool book because it sort of goes like basically chronologically in his life, and it just talks about like big themes and how they're like repeated throughout Steve Jobs' life, and how like I think what the movies did, like they're movies and you can't cover like all of this content in one movie and like make it like coherent. So what each of the 2 movies like did well is they picked like a part or like a theme of Steve Jobs' life and made a movie about that. The first one where Steve Jobs is played by Steve Jobs movie. No, not this one. So the second one that came out is the one directed by Danny Boyle. Oh, it's written by Aaron Sorkin. He's a great writer. He like screenplay writer. He wrote The Social Network, I believe, and originally he wrote The West Wing. I haven't seen The West Wing, but The Social Network is one of my favorite movies. Yeah, the second one, so that really focused on his relationship with his daughter, which was like really complicated because he denied that she was his daughter, and it was really messed up. And yeah, in the first movie where he's played by, I think the other one is called Jobs, not Steve Jobs. Let's see, Jobs. There we go. He's played by, what's this man's name? Ashton Kutcher. There we go. This other movie focuses more on like, the side of Steve Jobs that like everyone knows about, Apple, stuff like that, which is like also cool. What the book does really well is show like a sort of very balanced view of his life. And what I really liked is like Walter Isaacson actually like talks, like he wrote it with Steve Jobs, like where he would like interview him and interview a bunch of people around him, and he only agreed to write the book because Steve Jobs said that like he wanted it to be like fair and show like everything the way it was, and like the true light of. And so what the book did well is like give a very balanced view of Steve Jobs, I want to say, like sort of all the like good that he, like I think a lot of people see in him, which was like his inventions and how he was like crazy designer and like changed the world in so many ways, but also that it wasn't like that came at a cost for a lot of people around him and in his life. And I thought that was really cool. Not the bad parts of his life were cool. The way the book showed those, and it's sort of like cool, like more as a general note. Like I was reading this because you want to find out how successful people did what they did. I think what's really cool about a book like this is you can sort of learn principles from them, but also cherry pick the good and the, like, I feel like someone naively might say, oh, he was an asshole and that's what made him good, and therefore if I want to be the next Steve Jobs, I have to be an asshole. I think the value of a book like this is that you can read it and be like, these aspects of him were good and I want to do that, but these were bad and I don't want to do that. Does that make sense? That's my review of the book. It was a good book. It gets into like a bunch of the details around like the different launches and stuff like that. It's like super detailed. A lot of it is like very funny too. Talks about like Pixar, which was really interesting as well, like in how involved he was in that, which was really interesting. It's a good book. Just I do recommend it. But yeah, take away from the book the good parts. That's what I'm gonna say. Like the good parts of his life. The whole book is good. Moving on to, wait, what did I read after this? Oh, I only read 2 books. The second, I guess I only read 2 books. I started a few other books and they couldn't get into them, so I moved on. The reason I started reading and stuff is I watched this very cool documentary by this guy, also named Max Joseph, on YouTube. I do recommend watching it. He talks about, it's all about like books and bookstores, and he like, as he's like telling and interviewing like these people about like reading and things like that, he goes and visits a bunch of bookstores around the world that are very cool. But he also, at the beginning, he interviews this guy who's all about like productivity. I'd seen his TED talk around procrastination, and in that in his interview, he talks that, I think the most notable quote is, he says like, oh, like people say, oh, my grandpa's read everything, or like my grandma is like, literally owns every book in the world and stuff like that. But what he says is, if you just put 30 minutes of your day away to read, then that could be you. Like literally he does the math and it's like, you would read like 20 books a year, which adds up to a lot of books. No, wait, that doesn't. Basically it adds up to a lot of books. You end up reading a lot of books. So I started doing that. I'm a bit late, but I've just like the days where I'm unable to read 30 minutes, just move it over, and then I read like an hour. But it's worth it. It's fun. I do recommend doing it. And watch the documentary because it's good just in general. Moving on to book number 2. You should read this. Book number 2, I was sort of, after reading a very long book, I didn't want to get into another very long book, so I went for the shortest book in my book collection. It was on the table, the Modern Classics table. It's Franny and Zooey. Okay, I think it's Franny and Zooey, but in the book, it might be Zooey. I think it's Zooey. Look, when I read it as Zooey. If it's not that, it's not that. It's okay. I'm gonna say Zooey. It's a really interesting book by J.D. Salinger. The reason I picked this book off the table is I had read Catcher in the Rye. That sounds wrong right now, but it is also 1 a.m. Catcher in the Rye. Oh, there's a movie. Yeah, and Catcher in the Rye I really liked reading that. That was one of the books like that I most notably liked to read back in high school. So this book I picked because it was like sweet, like short and sweet. It was a bit hard to get into, but it basically, Franny and Zooey are 2 siblings in a family of like child geniuses or something. Like they're all, sometimes I would sort of read a page and realize I hadn't fully paid attention, but basically it's a very cool book because it's sort of written like I want to say a play where it's like all about dialogue. It starts with Franny. She goes on a date with this guy that she's seeing like in college. Well, they live, it's like long distance. She goes to him, they have a date, and during the date so it's like all the dialogue around that, and she sort of like starts going off on how like, oh, professors are so like snooty, and that it sounds bad like this, but it's basically, it's interesting because you can sort of tell that the author is like talking about a bunch of grandiose ideas through the like tool of just making it a dialogue between people that are like consider themselves smart. And it's interesting in that way because she sort of talks about, she basically says like, oh, teachers are so they think they're better than other people because they're teachers, and like very few professors and like students who go to these big colleges think they're like better by the virtue of them going to those colleges. And like she goes off about this, and then she like even like she goes like crazy where she has like she like passes out, something like that. Anyway, and she like talks about this like religious thing she read about. That's where it's sort of like, it's weird because it does have a religious component, but I thought it was interesting because it was like critical. It's not critical of it, like I'm not a religious person, but it didn't talk about religion as like, oh, you should do it. It was sort of like discussed, where she talks about like how she read a book, and basically this priest, his thing is like saying, what's the phrase? It's like, I love Jesus or something. It's not like that, but and basically you to always repeat it, to just constantly say that, and that's the only way to sort of access this like higher dimension of yourself and stuff like that. And so she wants to, as a normal person, just like tries to do this, and she basically like sort of goes crazy around that. And that's what like the dialogue is about. And like the sort of the second half of the book follows more. It's like Zooey, and he ends up having a conversation with her and with their mom. There's this weird relationship with the mom where they all treat her like trash because I guess she's not smart. Like all the kids are smart. They're also there's this like component where the dad, he had like a TV show where it was like, and it was all the kids were on the show because they were smart. So it was like a panel of smart kids type thing. Didn't get that too much. Anyway, the second half is like he's talking to his mom about like, oh, what are they gonna do about Franny, because she's like, now she's like at home and she's like lying on the couch like crying her eyes out because she like isn't going to succeed in her path, or we don't know why, but she's just like not feeling good. And like Zooey is, I think he became an actor, but he's like has very big ideas for himself and things like, he like thinks of himself as like better than other people. And he like, yeah, basically it's an interesting like even the discussion of religion I thought was like interesting, even though I'm not like religious. I definitely liked the like approach to it, and how it's not so much about the like religion or the just, it's not so much about like the specific religion of like Christianity, which they're Christian. It's about using the like religious side to like better yourself, and like so basically like if you're able to like do this thing where you're praying every day, it makes you a better person because you're like fully committed to something, sort of thing, which like in a way I could get like spiritually. Just thought it was interesting. It sounds like the author just had a bunch of ideas about religion and like people in academia, and just like a sort of, it sounded like a big like letter about a bunch of things that he was mad about, like the way they worked and how like people aren't focused on the right things and things like that. And rather than just writing a big letter to the world about that, he made a book where people through a dialogue discuss it, which I thought was cool. That's basically what I have to say about that. And unlike I said at the beginning, I only read 2 books actually. I am currently reading. All my books almost fell down. Stephen King's The Shining. I rewatched the movie recently, like a month ago, and it's a great movie. Don't need to tell you about that. Stanley Kubrick. And since I'm reading, I was like, might as well read where the like OG story came from. It's only $7 at a bookstore for a big book like this. Like, it's a brick. I'm not gonna review it now. If this video gets 1 like, I will do a video in the future where I review maybe 3 more books. Maybe I'll wait till I read 3 more books. So far, it's very good. I know that, I'll talk about this more when I actually finish the book, which I am going to do for this one, because I am very interested in it. It just takes time to get through a big book. I was talking to my friends about how apparently Stephen King was pissed at Stanley Kubrick for the sort of stuff that he changed about the story, and he took out some things. And reading the book, you sort of like see like from like, if you think of both of them as like artists, like you would, I thought originally it was like, yeah, but Stanley Kubrick, I think here's what I'm trying to say. Stanley Kubrick made a masterpiece of a movie because he didn't just take this book and film this story. He took what he thought would be a good movie out of this book and made a masterpiece. And this book is also very good. And I think, like, separately from that, like, there are aspects of the story missing in the movie that are so good in the book, but I understand why they're not in the movie. Anyway, I'll review that next time. I'm also this much of the way through, so I don't even know half the stuff that's not in the movie. Very exciting stuff. Hey, it is Max from the future. Haha, just YouTuber things. I realized while editing, I did read a third book, The Big Short, based off of the movie The Big Short. Just kidding. The other way around. That was funny. This was a very good book as well. A bit pricey, I think. I got it for $15, but then I got a second copy at a like thrift store for like $1. Not a lot of money for a book that talks about a lot of money. If you've seen the movie, it's very entertaining, like the way it's written, the movie. And I was wondering, like, oh, is the book the same? And the book is the same. It's a guy that's written a few books. He was in finance, and then he went into writing about finance because he didn't like finance for many reasons. And it's a really good book about the whole housing crisis stuff. And if you're at all interested about that, or about even just learning about like how like finance works and stuff, it's a really good book. It's well written. Recommend. Do I have anything else to say about it? It follows the like few people who weren't like the big finance like sharks and stuff that predicted the housing crisis and so they like bet against these things that everyone thought were unfailable. And it's really interesting, and it covers their like personalities and what led them to have those personalities that would bet against like the financial world, like the world economy, basically. Really interesting. Anyway, that's it for Max's book club part 1, and I'm calling it book club because other YouTubers have done this, notably the #1 YouTuber. That's why I thought, hey, why not? Literally, if this video gets 1 like, I'll do it again. If it gets no likes, well, I won't. It's fine. I don't care. This video could get no views. It's okay. I don't know, maybe am I gonna edit this now? I might. Filming episode 5 of the Max and Dylan show tomorrow. That's gonna be exciting. And then the next episode after that is gonna be the season finale. And ooh baby, it's gonna be juicy. I mean, I don't know. We haven't filmed it yet. We'll see. Anyway, let me know if you liked it. Oh, and also like, if you've read the books or have questions about them or have your own opinions about what I said, and if you agree or disagree, maybe put stuff in the comments. I don't know. I don't usually get a lot of comments, but cool. Outro.